You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support the show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
Chin, The Life and Crimes of Mafia Boss Vincent Gigante by Larry McShane is the definitive biography of one of the Mafia's greatest and deadliest crime bosses, Vinny the Chin Gigante. He was the guy, right?
The bathrobe dude, I think.
I don't know how many years ago, it's like 15, 20 years ago, was walking around town in his bathrobe to make it look like he was too crazy to go to jail. I think it was.
The guy's amazing.
But was the Chin everything everyone thought? He ran one of the most powerful mafia families in the United States, but he was also known to wander around New York City in his bathrobe, muttering to himself. There you go. And he was in and out of psychiatric hospitals so often he received the nickname the Odd Father.
Great guy.
Was it all an act to dodge the feds, or was Chin really crazy? Get the real story behind the Odd Father in Chin by Larry McShane, now available in paperback everywhere books are sold. More info at www.kensingtonbooks.com.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Thursday, December 1st, 2016. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 4-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, journalist David Dayen. On the carrier deal, the Cures Act, Mnuchin, the new Treasury Secretary, and will the Dems heed the call on exposing the Trumpista plan to destroy the regulatory state? We'll see.
Jill Stein 2020.
Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's popular vote lead surpasses 2.5 million votes. And the president-electoral Mr. Trump is being subjected to a recount in Michigan. It's begun in Michigan, still being litigated in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Many people expect nothing to come of it, although I did meet a psychic. Well, I met someone who knew a psychic.
What do I know?
Meanwhile, Trump is assembling the wealthiest cabinet in maybe a U.S. history. And McCrory in North Carolina refuses to go. And he still has the apparatus of the state to help him stick around for a little bit longer. Republican attack on the Affordable Care Act coming into focus. I hate to toot my own horn, but if you listened to this program weeks ago, you already know what it is. The Cures Act, is it good, bad, or just ugly? Newt Gingrich, still not paying his bills.
Holla at your boy.
What are you going to do?
I appreciate that.
And apparently magic mushrooms may lessen depression. Hallucinogenic mushrooms.
Sam?
2,000 vets are scheduled to form a human shield at the Dakota Pipeline. All that and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to go through. I think we're going to be talking to David Dayen quite a bit over the coming weeks. Well, I mean, I guess we already have been over the past months, but maybe even more regularly because we're moving into an era where there's just going to be a lot more, and again, I say this every day, or I have at least for the past couple of weeks, and we're still, so we're working out what the direction of the show is. It's going to change to a certain extent because the nature of the news is going to change. And the nature of what we as progressives need to know is going to change. And, one of the things that we've been talking about is, what should be the strategy for dealing with Donald Trump and this administration going forward. And the dilemma that I've been wrestling with is we don't know exactly what we're fighting against. And by that, I mean, we have a far right. I mean, this is about as far right. I can't even imagine an administration set up by any of the other Republicans who ran, frankly, that would be more to the right than this one. In terms of, someone who wants to destroy Medicare and the Affordable Care Act as the head of Health and Human Services, someone who is avowedly an opponent of public education, being head of the Department of Education, a banker with virtually no skill sets, being a Secretary of Treasury. Jeff Sessions. I mean, can you imagine someone more antithetical to what the Department of Justice does than Jeff Sessions? I mean, so we're dealing on one hand with a far-right Republican administration. On the other hand, we're also dealing with an authoritarian leader who is going to preside over some measure of a kleptocracy, who is willing to target individuals, entities, and whatnot with the force of the government in a way that is unique and abusive, who is also fascistic in his pronouncements. And the question that I've been struggling with is, does fighting Donald Trump as an authoritarian, as a possible fascist authoritarian leader, let's say, does that necessarily feed and provide nutrition for a right-wing administration? Or put it the other way, if we fight this right-wing administration, does that provide some nutrition to a growing authoritarianism? The same weapon that you use against a right-wing administration is not necessarily the same weapon you would use against a fascistic, a full-on fascistic one. And the question is, if you use one or the other, does it enhance the power? Does it sort of backfire in terms of that other fight? So that's one of the things. And I'm, becoming more and more convinced that what is really needed right now is just more education for people. And it's short term, I'm saying, without having to commit to a strategy, the smartest thing I think that we can do is just to learn more about these issues. And so that's where we're going to be doing a lot of it. We're going to be drilling down into these things like we did yesterday in terms of Medicare. We'll do this with the Affordable Care Act. We may not get to it today, but there is a story in Politico suggesting exactly what I said a couple of weeks ago. They will repeal the Affordable Care Act in early 2017, but they will punt its implementation for 3 years. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the program today. But with all this happening, of course, the holidays are still coming up. And I have a feeling people are probably, there's probably a twin impetus here. Well, one, there's probably three impetuses. One, you want to cut out those people from your holiday list that you don't like anymore because they don't understand what's going on in this country. Maybe they voted for somebody you didn't appreciate.
Bye-bye.
But for the people that you do still maintain relations with, friendly relations with, you want to get them a great gift, but maybe you also don't want to spend as much as you might have because you're a little bit concerned. Boom, bingo. Movement watches, MVMT watches. That gift-giving anxiety that you have, gone. They start at just $95 at a department store. you're looking at spending $400 to $500 for a watch of this quality. Movement figured out that by selling online, they were able to cut out the middlemen and retail markup, providing the best possible price. I got Nikki one of these watches. It's a silver one. I can't remember what the name of it was. Kelly, do you remember what the name of it was? Silver Sky or something? She loves it.
I think it was Silver Pearl.
Silver Pearl, exactly. She loves it. Classic design, quality construction, styled minimalism. Over 500,000 watches sold in over 160 countries. Get 15% off today. That comes with free shipping and free returns by going to mvmtwatches.com/majority. This watch has a really clean design. It's the one I got Nikki. They all do, for the most part. This one she loves, though. She gets compliments. That means that I get points. Boom. That's the way that works. Go to mvmtwatches.com/majority. Join the movement. Later in the program, I'm going to play a video from Cenk Uygur, who was responding to this carrier deal. I've been talking about this carrier deal a little bit, but in a different context, because in the context of why they were moving to Mexico, why they were looking to cut costs, even though this is the most profitable subsidiary of United Technologies, which is the larger company. And have been talking about in the context of them wanting to cut costs so they could do stock buybacks. They've done, United Technologies has done literally billions of dollars of stock buybacks. The CEO has made hundreds of millions of dollars. It's really quite clear. Cenk had a comment on the carrier deal, and we may cover it with David Dayen, or I may play the video afterwards. And I think some of what he gets right, some of what he gets wrong. And we will get to that in a bit. The other night, I went on Hayes. I got my classic tweet about Harry's. Nobody tweeted Harry's about me shaving for Thanksgiving, which was a lot more moving for me. But, well, I know I did that because, it was in honor of my grandmother. I never shaved when I would go to Thanksgiving when she was alive. When she got older, I did. Like when she broke 100, maybe even the late 90s, I was like, give her a break. Shave. But you know what? By that point, she couldn't see. So my point, I guess here's my point. If someone's bugging you about shaving at the holidays, just do it now. And when I shave, of course, I shave with Harry's. Why? Because they don't overcharge you for incredibly high-quality razors. This holiday, Harry's is offering a limited edition shaving set, midnight blue chrome razor handle, which you can get engraved with initials. I have a feeling my brother-in-law is going to get these. 3 of Harry's German-engineered 5-blade cartridges that provide a close, comfortable shave, foaming shave cream that smells amazing, beautifully designed gift box, goes for $30 on harrys.com. They also offer handles and sets starting at just $10 if you've never tried Harry's for yourself. And look, until we got another week of this, free shipping ends on December 9th, so act now. Go to harrys.com right now to get a limited edition holiday shave set while supplies last. And don't forget to enter code Majority Report at checkout for $5 off. That's harrys.com, code Majority Report. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we're back, David Dayen. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. It's always a pleasure to welcome to the program David Dayen. He has written in just about every single publication known to man, currently writing pieces, well, for still all of them, it seems, but you're sort of like on a beat at The Nation magazine now, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to be doing some work at The Nation between now and the end of the first 100 days of our great and glorious new president, looking at the personnel and also the policies of that interim beginning period.
Well, let's start with some of the personnel because I know a lot of people were very concerned about voting for. Some people framed, I guess, the election between a lunatic and Goldman Sachs. Well, it seems like they got both, according to some tweets I've seen. Let's talk about the new Treasury Secretary, and we might Munkin, and let's also Mnuchin, I should say. Mnuchin, and also Wilbur Ross. Tell us who these guys are.
Right. So the common thread between Steve Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross is that they profited off the foreclosure crisis, and in particular the inability of the government to do anything to arrest the foreclosure crisis. So these were profiteers. Steve Mnuchin, he led a consortium that bought the failed predatory lender IndyMac. They renamed the bank One West Bank, and Mnuchin became the CEO. This was in 2009. It was a very cleverly structured deal. They bought it from the FDIC. And the FDIC, which they did fairly commonly, they backstopped the One West Bank. In other words, any losses on loans over 20%, the FDIC picked up that cost. And this created a powerful incentive for One West Bank to simply foreclose on people, knowing that they would be protected on the downside, and they could run up fees and whatever else on the upside, and make a lot of money. In fact, One West Bank made $3 billion in this period, despite having just a garbage pile of loans as their main portfolio. And then they sold One West Bank to another bank called CIT for double the purchase price within 5 years. So this was a very lucrative deal for Mnuchin and One West.
Now, when they sell that bank 5 years later, does that still come with the FDIC, like that guarantee?
On the old portfolio, it does. On that legacy portfolio, it in fact does. So any losses on those legacy loans from IndyMac, they end up picking up that price.
Now, but I mean, who wouldn't buy this? Like, why is the government even selling this? I mean, if you're going to cover the losses, why don't you just keep it so you get the upside? I don't understand. It's like me getting rid of a. Let me just explain this to folks, because this is so insane. It seems to me, right? It's like me having a car that I don't want to, everything keeps breaking down, and I don't want to pay for this anymore. So I sell it to somebody else, and I say, look, if anything goes wrong with that car, I will pay for it forever. And so they get to drive the car, and I still get to pay for all the expenses, but I don't have the car anymore. Right. I don't understand this.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, the FDIC, they're a conservator. Their entire job when they get a bank or failed institution into their hands is to get it out. I mean, that's their entire MO, is to spin it out. And of course, in 2008, nobody wanted to buy these types of things, so they had to give very generous terms in order to find people willing to buy them. A lot of the incidences in which they did this, they ended up okay. The problem is when they put it in the hands of a guy like Mnuchin, he just saw it as a huge money-making opportunity. And One West foreclosed at least on 36,000 people, and I believe that's just in California. They initiated 36,000 foreclosures, and much less workouts on the loans because it didn't make any financial sense. The financial incentives were all towards foreclosure rather than any kind of loan modification that would keep somebody in the home. And just like the rest of the industry, these foreclosures were committed fraudulently. There is a deposition that's still online that you can go see. It's linked in my Nation piece from July 2009 from Erica Johnson-Seck, who was a vice president with One West Bank, and she would sign affidavits attesting that everything in these loan files was true and correct. This was under penalty of perjury. She signed these affidavits saying that she had reviewed all the business practices and everything in this loan file, and it's all correct. And they asked her, how long did she take to execute each one of these affidavits? And she said, well, I've changed my signature, so I only write an E, so now it takes me 30 seconds. And there is no way physically that she could review all the business practices and everything around that particular loan in 30 seconds. It is just an impossibility. And she did this on, I believe she attested to 750 loans every week.
Wow.
So this was a standard practice of robo-signing these documents and submitting them to courts fraudulently as evidence when the evidence was in fact not true. And she also admitted to not signing them in front of a notary, which kind of defeats the purpose of notarizations. And she admitted that she didn't know any of the records and how they were imputed and how they were collected. She just went on faith that these things were correct.
All right, so
this is what One West did.
Let me amend my analogy then. So it's as if I said this, like, I will cover the expenses of your car if anything happens to it. And I, as the guy who buy the car, am like, oh, great, because I get paid, incidentally, for every parking meter I mow down. And I just go out and mow down parking meters and get them to fix my fender every time. I mean, that's basically it, right? They started.
I also didn't have title on the car.
Right.
I didn't actually have the true title on this car, but I'm going to use it anyway. And, I guess the analogy gets a little more.
All right. But just to make this clear to people, by foreclosing on all these people, because foreclosure has a risk, right, on the banks if you can't sell the houses again. So really what the hope is that you do some type of workout deal where you lower the principal and the people can stay in the home and at least you get X cents on the dollar. But if you are incentivized, if somebody's got backstopping you, you can take these risks by foreclosing on all of them because either some will pay off, and the ones that don't, somebody else is going to pick up the tab. So that's basically what they did, right? And generating the fees, of course.
That's exactly right. And they did it in such extreme circumstances. There's a case in Minnesota where a woman came home from a blizzard to find her locks changed because One West had initiated the foreclosure. A famous case out here in Los Angeles, individuals actually went to Steve Mnuchin's house and camped out on his lawn because he had foreclosed on this lady named Rosemary Gudiel. And the activist said, well, if you're going to take away her house, we're going to move into yours. So they actually camped out at his house. And this was one of the few loans that ended up actually being worked out by One West Bank after the fact. There's another case in Florida where he foreclosed on someone who had a 27-cent payment error. Of course, this was standard in the industry. If you have any payment reduction beyond the price, you were put into default. This was kind of how the computer process worked at these mortgage servicing companies. But this is another example. There was also at One West Bank a very particular focus on foreclosing on reverse mortgages. They had a reverse mortgage business called Financial Freedom, and even though they had about a market share of about 17% of the industry in reverse mortgages, these are the things that are hawked on late night TV to seniors saying, hey, you have equity in your house, do a reverse mortgage and we'll give you money. And you don't have to pay it back for years and years. Well, they had about 17% of the industry, Financial Freedom, this division of One West, in reverse mortgages. But they committed 39% of the foreclosures out of the industry. So it was about twice as many as what they owned. They would foreclose. And the other thing I would say is that a great majority of these residential foreclosures took place in minority areas. The California Reinvestment Coalition, which is an organization out here, did a study showing that it was close to 2/3 of all mortgages that were foreclosed on by One West were done in places with majority zip codes.
All right, so this guy basically ran a business that was not just profiting off of the misery of millions of Americans, but literally causing causing the misery for money. I don't know how else to articulate it. Does he have any positive traits that would recommend him to be Treasury Secretary, or is it just the fact that he? I know he was a very early fundraiser for Donald Trump. Was having $250,000 a plate fundraisers in New York City. Aside from that, does he have any other broader sort of macroeconomic skill sets? Or
what I've been saying to people is that his time at Goldman Sachs is probably the best part of his resume, which people get surprised at, because you can't just yell Goldman Sachs, Goldman Sachs, Goldman Sachs. The One West stuff is much, much worse here. And Mnuchin also seems to have this penchant for getting out of things and profiting right before they collapse. So he cashed out of his Madoff, his wife's or his mother's portfolio of Madoff money right before it collapsed, or maybe a couple of years before it collapsed. And the trustee tried to claw back the gains from that, because they were ill-gotten gains. They were from a Ponzi scheme. They tried to distribute them among all the people who were victims of the Madoff scheme, and he refused to do that. This was like $3 million, personal money. Similarly, he somehow got paid off for this loan with Relativity Media. He's also a Hollywood guy who financed a lot of really bad films. He got paid off for this $50 million loan from Relativity Media a month before they went into bankruptcy. So he has this penchant for getting out of this stuff right before the bottom drops out.
Well, so I guess in the event that he tenders his resignation, we should all get very concerned. Well, he didn't.
Right.
He didn't fund.
That makes him smart, though.
Right,
as Donald Trump would say.
He didn't fund Bannon's movie, did he?
I don't think so. And they did both work at Goldman Sachs. We know that. But no, he worked on a lot of superhero movies, Suicide Squad, and Mad Max Fury Road, and a few others.
Okay, so yeah. Well, Mad Max Fury Road apparently was good. I went with my wife.
I don't agree.
Well, I'm not making that claim. I'm not making that claim. Others here are. I went with my wife. I don't want to get into it, but she insisted on seeing the 3D version. I can't see 3D with my glasses, so I think I ended up watching the Beach Boys movie with John Cusack as she watched that movie. So I never saw that one.
I watched the Beach Boys.
All right. Well, I want to get to also Wilbur Ross. What can you tell us about him?
Right. So Wilbur Ross is like this private equity baron. It's an interesting choice for the Commerce Department, who's an organization that's supposed to promote commerce within the United States, because a lot of what he did was outsource the jobs of these companies that he would pick up that were failing, particularly a textile company in North Carolina. But where he intersects with the foreclosure crisis is that one of these dead companies that he picked up out of the ground and tried to rehabilitate was called American Home Mortgage Servicing, or OMSI. And OMSI was absolutely one of the worst mortgage servicing companies in America. There's no doubt about it. They used that third-party processing company, DocX, to write up these fake mortgage assignments to use as evidence in court cases. They did this thousands and thousands of times. The Linda Green documents, a lot of those were OMSI documents. And Linda Green was this person who was signing on behalf of 20 different banks, and it wasn't even always her signature. The other employees, to move the assembly line along at DocX, other employees would sign her name, and they asked DocX, why did you use Linda Green as this, authorized to sign on behalf of all these banks? And they said her name was easy to spell. And that's why they used her so the rest of the employees could easily spell it. After OMSI, basically they got bought by another mortgage servicing company called Ocwen, and Wilbur Ross went onto their board, and Ocwen was fined for $2 billion by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the director, Richard Cordray, said that they violated the law, and I'm quoting, at every stage of the mortgage process. So this was another bad company, and Wilbur Ross, another interesting timing here, ended up leaving Ocwen at the end of 2014 and selling his $72 million in stock right before the stock crashed after revelations of more illegal behavior and fell by 20%.
These guys are super lucky.
They're really lucky guys. I just can't imagine how he would have figured that out. Being on the board and everything, of course, that's a position that doesn't get a lot of information.
Right? No, of course not.
About the company.
Well, I'm sure the SEC might look into that in the future.
Right, absolutely. But here's the thing. Okay, so the overlay is this: these two guys were profiteers of this great foreclosure crisis, right?
Not just profiteers, though, right? Not just profiteers, because profiteers make money off of catastrophic events. These guys enhanced and created and increased these events, right? I could be a war profiteer is one thing, but if I'm the guy who's actually going there and assassinating one of the leaders of one country and blaming it on the other country to start the war, that's another. And in many respects, it sounds like these guys were actually creating the misery and not just profiteering off it.
Well, that's valid, but at the same time, these were industry, very standard practices that we know all about, that this was systemic. And what we know is that the administration, the Obama administration, failed to stop these practices at any level. And what we also know is that this failure was at least in part responsible for this Republican backlash that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
There was a very interesting study done this week by the Center for American Progress. And it looked at counties in the Midwest, in the states that flipped, it looked particularly at counties that went from red to blue, counties that went from, or blue to red, Democrats to Republicans. And it found that the negative equity rate, in other words, the rate of people who owed more on their mortgages than they were worth, was much higher in these areas that went from blue to red, and also in the urban areas that had much less support for the Democrat. And that's that negative equity rate is a decent indicator for whether that was a hard hit area for housing and foreclosures. And
I would
so
imagine
we
they could find
see-
that data too, though, about the foreclosures directly, right? I mean, because
Yeah, but it's easier to do negative equity. Actually, it's a terrible, terrible failure of public policy that we actually don't know how many people get foreclosed on. Most of the studies are industry-funded studies. We don't actually track that data at the federal level, which
that's
is completely
crazy.
ridiculous. Yeah, but here's the point. So President Obama, in one of the biggest mistakes and failures of his presidency, ends up protecting bank balance sheets and favoring them over homeowner balance sheets. And they do ineffective and weak and in some cases predatory programs like HAMP to try to help out homeowners that don't do the job. And then when they find all these findings of horrible misconduct created by the banks and by mortgage servicing companies, they don't use that as leverage to get homeowners better outcomes. And as a result, at least in part, Donald Trump gets elected and then picks these guys who profited off that neglect to end up running the country.
It would make for
That's
a great.
the irony
It would make
this
for a
election.
great novel, wouldn't it? I mean, well, I mean, it's just you and I spoke about every one of these issues many, many times. Obviously, you literally
real time?
wrote the book in real time and after the fact, and complaining about it. And you literally wrote the book on this. And I don't know that at any time we contemplated the notion that there would be some measure of accountability of this ilk, right? I mean, because this is ultimately what's going to, the Donald Trump's election is going to really, really destroy any of, or the vast majority of Barack Obama's legacy, right? I mean, so many things are going to be unwound, and that's the ultimate irony. You know, we were, I don't think that, I mean, we must have probably a week's worth of hours on this, right? I mean, just you and I talking about this stuff. And I don't think at any time during that I ever contemplated like that there would be this type of accountability. It's highly unfortunate that it has to be this type of accountability as opposed to like maybe somebody just writing in the history books about it. But this is, it has come back around. It's
really the ultimate repudiation of the lack of accountability that that was engaged in during and after the financial crisis. If there was any justice in this country, Stephen Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross would be in a white-collar prison facility instead of the office of the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department. I mean, I say that without, I don't really think that's hyperbole. This was fraud that was manipulated in systemic ways that really implicates the top executives at every mortgage company in America. This was the largest consumer fraud in American history, and it went unpunished. And now here's the result.
And caused an incredible amount of pain. I mean, just an incredible amount of pain. Such
pain that people turned against the idea that government had their backs, that the idea that government could be a positive force in their lives. And they went to this other side. And this is the result.
Let's talk about
anything else. Let's talk about anything else.
I know. Well, I don't know that this is that much more uplifting, but let's talk about this Carrier air conditioning story because it's fascinating to me to see how people interpret what Donald Trump has done, what the lessons of this are. And just to put the facts out there so that we can have everybody understand what we're talking about. Carrier Air Conditioning, it's a subsidiary of United Technologies. It is in Indiana. They have 2 facilities there worth about 2,100 jobs. They had planned to move these jobs to Mexico. They've already begun to build a facility there. The state of Indiana, for some time over the past year, has been attempting to get them to stay by offering them a host of tax breaks, not unlike what we see really in every state in the country, where these
Everywhere.
corporations are basically bribed to stay in a state. I mean, Andrew Cuomo was, running TV ads bragging about how we have no taxes for 10 years if you come here, if you're a company or something to that effect.
Right.
More or less
Oh,
the
yeah.
same dynamic. Apparently, and Donald Trump used that carrier and claimed that if I become president and these guys try and do that, I'm going to slap a 35% tariff on them if they try and bring their air conditioners back into this country. Mike Pence is
for that.
Mike Pence is still the governor, and it's been reported that the reason why Carrier took this deal is because they were afraid, and this is from the negotiator in Indiana, that they were afraid because United Technologies does about 10% of their get 10% of their business from the federal government on federal contracts, amounting to almost $7 billion. They were afraid that they were going to get targeted. Now, who knows where they got that idea from? They never had that idea before. And
now, yeah, and I might depart from sort of the liberal line on this. I don't see a problem with that.
I got news for you. For me, the only problem I have about leveraging that federal contract is that should be policy. The problem with this.
Exactly.
First off, I don't like the idea of taxpayer money going to bribe these companies. But let's fight one battle at a time.
But that's the world as it is, and really, that tax incentive from everything that's been discussed is $700,000 a year. And Carrier said publicly that they would save $69 million by moving facilities. That $700,000 can't be the reason.
No, the reason is they're afraid of
just
the $7 billion annually that they.
That's right.
And you know what? They should be. But the problem with this is that this is not policy, and so now we have the president because today it could be I'm going to threaten United Technologies with their $7 billion worth of contracts, and tomorrow it could be just some random company that's like, hey, maybe you should try out Trump napkins for your commissary. And if you don't, then maybe this other contract.
Actually seems like a good idea.
I mean, that's the biggest problem I have.
The way I see it, I think there are three approaches to how you deal with outsourcing and these kinds of issues. The first approach is the neoliberal approach that says this is part of the natural order of the sweep of history, and outsourcing is good for consumers and their prices, and it actually mocks the idea that you can save these jobs. And go look at President Obama speaking at a town hall meeting in Indiana within the last few months, literally mocking the idea that Donald Trump could save any of these jobs. And then read his former economic advisor, Dayen Farrell's report for a consulting firm called McKinsey, making the argument that outsourcing is a good thing on balance for America. So that's the one way you can look at this. The second way is through autocracy, and that's the Trump way. That you browbeat these companies, but you do it in a very ad hoc way, and you use the threats and kind of a patronage kind of machine to get your way. And then the third way that you deal with this situation is democracy. And that's the Bernie Sanders way. Bernie Sanders has put out this bill that does exactly what you say. It codifies the fact that if you are a company that has your headquarters in this country and benefits off the infrastructure of this country and the rule of law of this country and everything else that this country affords you, that we are not entitled by law to give you billions of dollars of your profit margin in federal contracts. And we're going to take into account what you do as a corporate citizen in determining what those contracts are going to be. And President
We already
Obama
do
has
that.
gotten this
We already
in
do
many
that.
ways.
Right. We've already do this, right? With many different, like you can't discriminate if you are getting a federal contract, right?
Right. President Obama has signed several executive orders saying federal contractors need to pay their workers $10.10 an hour at least. He said that they need paid sick days. He said that they cannot have committed fraud in the last 3 years prior to receiving the contract. But when it's outsourcing, nobody, that doesn't come into play for some reason. That's part of the natural order of globalization. You can't touch that. Well, I think I disagree, and Bernie Sanders disagrees, and this is a fundamental divide, I think, within the Democratic Party.
Yep.
And but there is a difference between what Trump's doing and how he's doing it in sort of an ad hoc way, and how it could be codified and made policy, and do it through democracy.
Now the ultimate irony is that all of those other regulations that executive orders.
Yeah, they're going to go.
They're going to go. So
They're gone.
Goodbye $10, 1010. Goodbye non-discriminatory provisions.
Right.
Goodbye sick days. And I would even go further in saying what Trump is doing here is like I say, this should be policy. It is highly problematic, it seems to me, to set the precedent that the president can pick and choose specific companies to bend to his will on something that is not in any way codified. Like there's no policy here. There's no reason why he can't do the next one, be like, Mar-a-Lago really needs this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is right against the wall with like the chairman's flight, right? I mean you're the head of the you're the head of the Port Authority. You're the head of the Port Authority. And if you have the ability, non-policy, to lean on the United Airlines to give a specific flight to South Carolina so you can go to your weekend home, how is this different? If it's not a policy, how is this different?
Right. Let me just say two things. I understand and agree with what you're saying. But number one, it does seem that in addition to the stick of these federal contracts, that Carrier was also swayed by the carrot of the fact that they're going to get huge tax breaks because that's just going to be general policy, and that they're going to get regulatory relief to a large degree. And that is policy. And I think that was part of the pitch. But
that pitch existed.
Because,
that pitch existed.
We're not going to really look around at you. You're not going to get OSHA, anything. And you're going to be able to keep all this money extra because we're going to give you huge tax breaks because we're going to give everybody tax breaks.
Yeah,
so,
I guess.
So
but I
part
mean,
of this was policy.
Okay.
Number one. Number two.
But wait, let me just push back on that a little bit. According to the guy who negotiated this deal in Indiana, part of the Indiana
the federal I know.
He said this is
but also
this was all
Carrier
there.
said we think, but Carrier's statement said we think that the new tax and regulatory environment makes sense for us to stay in the United States. And by the way, this is only 800 jobs. Most of the jobs are going to Mexico. They're still building that plant.
And tell me it's raining.
Sorry,
don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining.
I know you're a Josie Wales fan.
All right, Josie. So here we go.
Right, it's only half the thing.
The second thing I want to say is this.
Go.
The second thing I want to say is this. It should not be. My worry is when this criticism over this ad hoc approach. I don't want that to trend into the idea that there's nothing that politicians can do with the power and leverage they have to get good outcomes for American workers.
I agree with
that's
this.
That's where I get worried. That's where I get very worried. And that was the Obama approach. So, we shouldn't say that, oh, it's not sporting or it's unseemly that we use the power of the office to, protect American jobs. No, that should be the goal.
No, you're
if
absolutely
you want to do
right.
it in a codified way, that's fine. But
I think it's essential.
Let's not relinquish that power.
Yes. No, I think it's essential. I think he has now said it is. This is doable. It's clearly doable. We know it's doable, and I think really the push should be: this is not enough. You need to codify this. Why should Carrier have this treatment and not any other? See, it seems to me
there's literally another plant down the street from Carrier that's doing the exact same thing.
Yes, and I think
because there wasn't a video that went viral at the Rex Road ball bearing plant, it doesn't get as much attention. And this was a purely political play.
Of course,
Trump talked about this for months in the campaign. He had to get this. He had to get something. And so he probably, he overpromised on this, and so he had to do what he had to do.
This is the other conversation. Is the meta? This is
followed.
the meta conversation here, right? Because the way that, broadly speaking, Democrats and the left, whatever you want to call it, are responding to this is all over the map. It seems to me, and I think, this is part of the meta conversation that I think the response has to be very, very clear and specific. And I think Sanders had a very good angle on it, where he basically said that United Technologies rolled Trump, which I think is true. Look, $6 billion annually, $7 billion annually this company takes from U.S. taxpayers. If Indiana wants to give them more of their taxpayers' money, well, then Indianans should deal with them. But from a federal perspective, this should be policy. Like, you're not going to, we're just not going to give you business unless you're actually invested in this country. And period, end of story.
And
I think,
and let's be clear, because Sanders has been clear on this, it's not a win.
right.
This is 800 jobs out of 2,100.
Well,
this is one factory out of two.
I would say even bigger
he
than
did
that.
not fulfill this promise.
It's 800 jobs out of the tens of thousands that are leaving this country on any given week or month. There's no reason why you can't do this with all federal contractors.
Well, the other thing you have to think about is that why do companies leave America for these other countries? And, part of it is our trade policy. Since Donald Trump has been elected, the dollar has risen in price to a degree that if you do the calculations and say that every time the trade deficit increases, you lose X amount of jobs, and every time the dollar increases, you widen the trade deficit because your goods are more expensive and goods overseas are less expensive and therefore more attractive. He's lost hundreds of thousands of jobs already because the dollar has shot up since the election. So there's more to this than just looking for cheaper labor. I've talked to supply chain specialists and people in this industry, and they really say it's the price of the dollar. It's policy, like currency policy toward China. It's a whole host of other factors.
Let me add another factor.
Labor cost is a portion of it.
Let me add another factor here. It is a quick way for them to raise cash to continue. Yep. They have United Technologies has spent over $12 billion worth of stock buybacks. And
right.
And when you have its former CEO getting a $172 million golden parachute, where you have the company's 5 highest paid executives last year made more than $50 million. God knows what the board of directors and the hedge funders are making off of this when they do these stock buybacks. This legal manipulation of the stock value is, at least according to Bill Lazanik, responsible for a huge portion of our wealth inequality in this country. And this is, there's a lot of reason to believe that the reason why they wanted to go overseas there was to basically cut these costs and use that cash to buy back more stock. I mean, there's a
and it's
whole
tax
host.
policy too.
Yes.
I mean, when you put something overseas, you can transfer that profit and loss to that country, which may have a lower tax rate, corporate tax rate than this country, and so there's a lot of hiding the ball.
There's a lot of hiding the ball, but we do know
that goes on here.
Donald Trump has just shown us that that you can do this, and it should be policy, because otherwise it's just fiat and it's just whim, and that's problematic, I think. But I'm glad we've come to some agreement on that, for God's sakes. You know what? we don't. Yeah, it's so weird when we agree. We don't have time to talk about. There was two other things I wanted to talk to you about. Was that the cures? Just give me the quick rundown on that. I mean, because this is
cures bill.
Well,
it's
I think
cures,
you just did.
So everyone loves it, because who doesn't love cures? We want to cure everything. This is a bill that makes politicians feel good about their life and their work. The problem is that it's a huge wet kiss to the industry of the drug companies, because it obliterates the standards for reviewing drug policy, drug approvals at the FDA. That's what this is about. 1,400 lobbyists representing 400 different companies have been lobbying on this one bill that, the average person probably doesn't know about.
Right.
It's the only big thing that's going to be passed in the lame duck session, and it will be passed. It passed the House. It's going to pass the Senate. The president put out strong support for it yesterday. I know Elizabeth Warren gave this barn burner speech on Monday. That's not going to be enough, because people feel good about themselves because they're giving money to cures. It's a trade-off. There's money, a little bit of money, about $6 billion, but it has to be reauthorized every year, so it's not definitely $6 billion. For the National Institutes of Health, some of it goes towards Joe Biden's cancer moonshot initiative. This is, that obviously got the White House on board. Some of it goes towards other presidential priorities. A little bit goes to the FDA. But in exchange for that temporary money, it permanently changes the review process at the FDA in ways that will allow drug companies to spend less on approvals, get things to market quicker so they can make money off the drug quicker.
Lovely. Thank you for that recap. All right.
Yeah.
Well, David, let's. I'll send you an email. Let's do this again next week, because it's nobody's. This is like the old Fire Dog Lake days, where you would be doing like 30 stories a day.
Well, it's a target-rich environment right now.
Indeed. I don't think...
maybe that will calm down, but I doubt it.
Yeah, from your mouth. I doubt it. But David Dayen, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, see you. Bye.
It's like the old days when I would get off the phone with David. I was like, I don't know how this guy sleeps. He knows everything. Just like, give me a quick rundown of the cures. Ugh, the cures bill.
You don't know all about the cures bill already?
So, I mean, while it's fresh in people's minds about the carrier thing, and this is, we covered some of this ground with David Dayen, but let me reiterate here, because, and this is a little bit meta. Obviously, it's great that 1,000 people are not losing their job in Indiana. But there's a lot of downsides with this. Now, even if you put aside the tax giveaways for the state of Indiana, like I say, that is dime store stuff. That happens year in, year out, month in, month out. Not in favor of it, but the important part is this leveraging of federal contracts. Obama has done it through executive order for things like a minimum wage, $10 plus minimum wage, paid sick leave, anti-discriminatory regulations if you are a federal contractor. But here is how I think, and I think Cenk and I agree on this to a certain extent, and he may have had more to say about this afterwards, but someone just tweeted me this one because he apparently did it in an airport. I think that's a pretty good backdrop, actually. We maybe see if we can get our airport backdrop. But here is what I think is a mistake to do from both a policy and a political perspective. This is Cenk's take on it.
Our company is United Technologies, and it has a lot of government contracts. Now, if you want to get United States government contracts, then you're going to have to keep some of your jobs in the United States. Now, this is exactly what I've been saying to Democrats and President Obama, that you could do this stuff, that if you really wanted to apply pressure, there's 1,000 different ways to apply pressure. But they would never do it. I'm sorry, if you're a Democrat and you like Obama, I hate to break your heart, and you want to hate me for it, that's fine. But Obama wouldn't have done that. That's not who he is. He's not that guy. And in this case, it's an absolute fact, because Obama's president right now. If he wanted, he could have pressured Carrier, but he didn't pressure Carrier. He didn't pressure United Technologies, and he didn't threaten to take away their government contracts, because he's not that strong. And he always thinks his default mode is, oh, there's nothing we could do. Oh, there's nothing we could do? Oh, no. You guys don't understand. There are consequences to that. No, I do understand. What I'm asking you to do is risk those consequences to protect American workers. And you didn't do it. And now Trump did it. Now he's going to get a world of credit. And I'm the only one who's going to tell you about the downsides of that deal. And nobody's going to remember the downsides of that deal. Nobody's going to see those tax breaks later. It's going to be a giant political win for Donald Trump. That is, by the way, as I just said, somewhat earned. There are so many options that the Democrats never choose to use. Oh, nothing we can do. Oh, corporations, we got to give them whatever they want. Oh, they want to outsource the jobs, let them outsource the jobs. Threaten their government contracts? Yes, you threaten their government contracts. That's called being strong. So I told you that there would be some small upsides to Donald Trump winning, because at least he's strong, right? Believe me, there are 1,000 more downsides, and we've got 1,000 videos to talk about those. But credit where credit is due today. They got this deal done, and not only will it look great for them as a matter of politics, but it actually saved 1,000 American jobs. Strength. It matters. It makes a big difference. It isn't unsophisticated to talk about strength. It's actually smart, and that's correct politics. So today, like we told you we'd keep an open mind. So today, nice job, Donald Trump. And Democrats, as usual, you ought to be embarrassed.
All right, look, so, and I agree that this should have been Democratic policy. But here is the danger with making this about Donald Trump being strong. Aside from the fact that for $7 billion worth of annual contracts, and then on top of that, the $700,000 that in tax incentives that they're giving, and on top of that, all the regulatory relaxations that we don't know of at this point, Donald Trump got rolled. But aside from that fact, the take on this is not that Donald Trump is strong, because where does that lead us? So is it okay for him by whim? Like I say, it should be policy of the United States government. Policy. I think it should be statutory, not just even from the executive branch. Statutory policy. This is what you demand for. We want a law that says if you get more than 10% of your revenue, 8% of your business from federal contracts, then you must X, Y, and Z. Like I say, Obama has an executive order. You've got to pay your workers at least $10.10 an hour. You got to give them paid sick leave. You can't discriminate. On top of that, you got to be based in the United States. Can't offshore X amount of your profits. There's a whole host of things we can do there, but these need to be policies. It can't be about Donald Trump being strong. because that's an argument that down the road basically gives Donald Trump license to do whatever he wants as long as he's doing it from strength. Remember the old Bill Clinton, better strong than wrong, strong and wrong versus right and weak. Was that what it was?
That's exactly what it was. But I told Hillary all the time, she has no integrity. And we could have had Bernie Sanders, who's strong and right.
It's very, very dangerous to praise Donald Trump's strength as opposed to say, this should be policy. Because if this is going to be whimsy and Donald Trump gets to pick and choose on which companies he threatens with, well, we start with federal procurement, but we could move on to anything else, right? I mean, like, you're not going to be subject to OSHA rules, or maybe you're going to be subject to 2 times OSHA rules.
Maybe it's a 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
And maybe today it's like you don't outsource those jobs because I did a press opportunity at your factory, and tomorrow it's like because you guys don't send your executives to Trump Towers around the world, or you aren't supporting Peter Thiel's businesses, or whatever it is.
Also, their growth.
I mean, the point is, you don't praise the one-off whimsy of a potential autocratic fascistic leader. Not the angle. You call for policy. Good idea to leverage federal contracts. It should be policy, not about strength. This is just a gimmick. And like David Dayen told us, 1,000 jobs, that's great. The strength of the dollar over the past 2 weeks has probably lost us 10,000 jobs. God knows how many people's lives were ruined by Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary and Commerce Secretary over foreclosures. Call for policy, not for strength from our government. That's my advice. It's a meta argument a little bit. And to be fair, he's in an airport and he's just getting it out there. But we got to be very careful about this stuff now. Very careful. Because there's some real authoritarian impulses that are obviously there in Donald Trump, but they're there amongst the population too. And they don't need to be fed. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to the fun half.
Sounds great. Fun half.
First half is triage. Second half, more triage. Folks, it's your donations that make this show possible. This is going to be a long 4 to, 30 years.
I'm thinking, why not another term? I mean, I'm doing a great job.
I'm telling you something. If people go around, if people are not very careful with this stuff, and we're just...
The only reason they capped FDR was because he bombed Pearl Harbor for the Japanese. I didn't do anything like that.
I mean, we got to, and when I say 30 years, I'm talking about the Supreme Court, of course. Although I know we'll be able to weather that. And Peter Thiel will be a great
I should be on the
Supreme Court
Supreme
justice.
Court. Me and Peter.
But nevertheless, I don't even know where I was going with that. Join the Majority Report, please. Your support makes it possible for us to do this every day, and hopefully we can grow. We're going. I don't even think we've begun to see the worst of what's going to happen with the corporate media. Honestly, we have not. I remember the dark days of 2002 and 3 and 4, and Donald Trump is strong. The FCC.
Anderson, if you do it through the pants and you don't enjoy it, oh, wait, you are gay. It doesn't matter.
Honestly, you go ahead.
I just want to put in a plug for our YouTube channel because, you know, a lot of people have checked out temporarily, and I understand that completely. I would do the same if possible, but the clips and the segments that we're putting out right now are definitely comforting compared to what is on cable news right now, which is jarring. And you know, I if you're not looking at things that you know maybe we're looking at a little bit more, which you know independent media, it does help. I mean,
somebody wrote. I'm trying to find this email. Was it this kid? I don't know. If
Peter Thiel is in charge.
Okay, yeah, okay. Just wanted to email let you know how much I love the show. A while ago, Sam was discussing the role in Majority Report in progressive media landscape, and he didn't mention something I think the show does very well, at least in my experience, which might not be so obvious to you guys. The show's format organically helps people, particularly young people like myself, who might already be interested in progressive politics, become genuinely interested in policy. I stumbled upon popular clips from the fun half of the shows years ago on YouTube, and would definitely give you guys partial credit for getting me interested in the field that has since become the focus of my career. Can't imagine I'm the only one of your viewers who has had this sort of experience with the show. So the more you send out our YouTube clips, the more young people like James will go into professions that behoove the country.
I'm in charge of a new amazing department called getting rid of gross media platforms and replacing them with, what is it, Donald? Tremendous ones. So enjoy your gross little YouTube channel that encourages young losers who are not going to make any money, whose blood should merely be fueling my own genetic age reversal. While you have it.
He's doing that. He's doing that.
I know he is.
Shut down pretty soon.
Okay.
By the way.
But also, you know, as far as the YouTube content goes, you know, the entire podcast is the best that you can get because you're getting all of the information. But we're also increasing the output so that, you know, the clips that are just sound from cable news and everything like that, we're also putting up a lot more policy stuff now, starting now. So,
all right, 646-257 646-257-3920 646-257-3920 is the number. You can IM the show. JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. If you buy crap from Amazon, the least you can do is give us a kickback at majorityreportkickback.com. Click on the link, bookmark it, buy all your crap through there. We get a kickback. Same with jet.com, same place. Be right back.